Hi, everybody. This is Kate Lee Carey. Richie, do we have a quorum, and should we, are we ready to move?
Yes, we have a quorum.
Excellent. Well, good morning, everyone. This is your Bureau Advisory Committee Chair, Kate Lee Carey. Today is December 1st, and how is it possible that it's December? Your guess is as good as mine. This is our last meeting of 2020, and I appreciate everyone being here and having enough people to establish a quorum. So just before we get started, kind of following along on the way that we did this the last time, I will work our way through the agenda, and at each agenda item, we'll open it up to public comment. And for those who were here before, there's an easy way to do that, going through the moderator to ask questions. I'm sure the moderator will jump in and give us some advice on how that will work. But we'll start with our standard welcome and introductions, and then we can move forward with the rest of the agenda items. So I am Kate Lee Carey. I'm an attorney with Cooley, and I am an institutional representative, and I am the chair of the committee. And then I will hand it to Margaret, and then we can work our way down the line of the committee members.
Good morning, everybody. This is Margaret Ryder. I am the consumer representative on the committee and the vice chair.
Kate, I don't know who's at the top, but on my screen it's me, so I'll go ahead and
Go ahead, David.
This is David Weiss. I'm with Asher College and an institutional member. Good morning, everybody.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Joseph Holt. I'm an institutional representative with San Joaquin Valley College and Carrington College.
Morning, this is Thomas Wong. I'm a speaker's appointee to the committee.
Good morning, this is Lee Farron. I'm a speaker's appointee to the committee as well, and I work for the Public Law Center in Orange County.
Good morning, this is Kevin Powers. I'm here on behalf of Assemblymember Jose Medina, chair of the Assembly Higher Education Committee, who's an ex officio member of the committee.
Mike Sanchez, I think you're the last person on the top of the list here.
I'm a member of the Office of Public Affairs. I am not on the committee.
Oh, sorry. I thought maybe you were a newbie. Okay, so then I think that is all of our committee members then that have introduced themselves, and based on the folks that we have here, we have a quorum, so we can move forward to our next agenda item. So before we jump into the regular agenda items, the first thing we'll do is public comment that are for items that are not on the agenda. So these would be things that we could discuss at future meetings. So anyone who from the public that might have something that they'd like to add, now is your opportunity.
Hey, Kate, real quick, this is Lisa. I don't know if you want me and Doug to introduce as well.
Oh, sure, absolutely.
Anyway, this is Lisa Refretti, and I'm the Deputy Bureau Chief.
Good morning. My name is Doug Smith, and I'm Bureau Counsel.
And I guess this is actually a good opportunity for those who are not aware to learn the sad news that our Bureau Chief, Dr. Marion, has moved on to a new role outside of the state. So we are sorry that he is gone, and I miss him already. But Lisa, of course, is no one needs to question whether or not there is somebody at the Bureau who knows everything, because Lisa is still there. So, Lisa, thank you for all the extra work I'm sure you are doing right now between you and Doug.
No problem. Thanks, Kate.
Okay, so thank you to Lisa and Doug both. And so then we'll move to the public comments. If anyone from the public has anything they'd like to add about things not on the agenda, now's your chance.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions on the screen for your reference. And in the Ask field, typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, please type, "I would like to make a public comment," and send to all panelists. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests.
I'm thinking we do not have any public comments, moderator.
Yep, this is the moderator. Looks like we don't have any requests for public comment. Would you like me to go ahead and close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
So the next agenda item is number 3, which is the review and approval of the August 26th Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Is there any comments or corrections or edits from the committee?
I will move approval.
Thank you. Do I have a second?
David Weiss, seconds.
Thank you, David. So I think probably the easiest way to do the vote is that I will just go through the names and have you each vote a yay or nay. That way I can just go through this list on the top of my my screen here. So I will vote aye. David?
Aye.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
Margaret?
Aye.
And Thomas?
Aye.
Richie, did I get everybody?
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry, everybody. I have to keep scrolling across the top of my screen to make sure that I'm seeing all the names. So thank you, everyone. With that, we have unanimous consent to approve the August 26, 2020 Advisory Committee meeting minutes. Is there any public comment regarding the Advisory Committee meeting minutes before we move on to agenda item 4?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on this agenda item, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access this Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment on this agenda item. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Thank you very much. So moving on to our next agenda item, which is agenda item 4, remarks by a representative from the DCA regarding could be anything. Bureau operations, HR, administrative services, enforcement, IT, communications, and outreach. I will open the floor to our DCA representative.
Good morning, Advisory Committee members and Deputy Bureau Chief. I'm Carrie Holmes, Deputy Director, Board and Bureau Relations at the Department of Consumer Affairs. Thank you for allowing me this opportunity to provide a department update to your committee. One of our top priorities in Board and Bureau Relations is appointments. Appointments to the Advisory Committee are made by the DCA Director. Currently, the committee has 3 vacancies for public members, meaning not affiliated with an educational institution. There are 2 student positions and 1 consumer advocate. If any members of the public attending the meeting are interested in getting involved, please find the link titled Board Member Resources on DCA's homepage to apply for an appointment. Our work continues even though COVID-19 has changed the way we do business now and in the future. After a temporary closure in March due to state and local stay-at-home orders to prevent the spread of COVID-19, DCA offices remain open with preventative measures to safeguard the health and safety of our employees and visitors. DCA continues to partner with the Governor's Office and Business Consumer Services and Housing Agency on statewide efforts related to awareness and enforcement of public health measures. The economic impacts of the COVID-19 pandemic and unprecedented wildfire activities are expected to last for several years. The state needs to take immediate action to reduce costs and maximize efficiencies to support all Californians. In April, DCA and all boards and bureaus worked to limit expenditures and hiring to those only necessary to support core functions and emergency response activities. Additionally, DCA just learned in late November that the department and each board and bureau will be required to plan for a 5% permanent budget reduction no later than 21-22. DCA has begun working with bureau staff to identify a plan that will best fit the bureau's operational needs. DCA would like to thank the committee and staff for your continued service despite these challenges. Lastly, I would like to update you on some of the work Board and Bureau Relations is doing to support the Bureau's executive team. Board and Bureau Relations has put on 3 brown bag trainings this fall to provide leadership the opportunity to learn and discuss best practices on topics such as appointments, managing staff remotely, and providing ADA-compliant meeting materials to committee members and the public. In partnership with DCA's Solid Training Unit, board member orientation trainings have been held quarterly as remote sessions, and a new training for board presidents or committee chairs is in the planning stage. I look forward to getting to know you better. In the meantime, if you have any questions or need anything from DCA, please don't hesitate to reach out. Thank you again for the opportunity to present to your committee. That concludes my presentation.
Thank you very much. Any questions or comments regarding Ms. Holmes' presentation?
Yes, this is Margaret. I have a question. At your last presentation, you talked about the Churwell program, I believe it's called, and indicated you would find out what the timeline is for when that would start to include Bureau regulatory updates. And I wondered if you had been able to find out that information.
Sure. So right now, the Churwell project is still working with the initial pilot groups. And that feedback is being evaluated to determine the next stages of the rollout plan. So I don't have any timing to give you so far.
Do you have an overall sense of how soon this is supposed to get put into place? Are we talking a year, 2 years, 5 years, 10 years?
That's a great question, and I should know the answer, but I don't have it for you today. Let me see if I can email that over to your Deputy Bureau Chief before the end of the meeting.
That would be terrific. I appreciate that. And in particular, because we seem to, in my view, we seem to be having a bit of a backlog in getting regulations out related to statutory changes, and I realize in part that's because we have a continual stream of statutory changes, but it is a concern that some things are lagging. For example, the STRIF changes that went into effect in 2019, we still don't have new regulations on those, and I think the ones that have just gone into effect related to, I don't even know which, but a prior year. So a very important topic for the Bureau that we get something that will help get regulations out in a timely fashion. Thank you.
Sure. And just to clarify on the role of Churwell, so it will help show internally exactly where the regulations packages are and who has them in which step, but I think you will see progress just as the regulations unit continues to roll out and become more efficient as far as your concerns about the timing of regulations. But it certainly is a DCA priority, and we really do appreciate your patience as this continues to improve.
Thank you.
Thank you, Margaret. Anyone else have questions for Ms. Holmes? Okay. Well, with that, I will again open the floor to public questions and comments before we move on to the next agenda item.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on this agenda item, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit the requests. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right. So the next item on our agenda is agenda item 5, which is our Bureau operations update. Lisa, I presume you will be taking the lead on this one, and just for everyone's prior edification, I think what we did last time was we opened up the floor to public comment after each individual item so that we could keep track of which comments went with which item. So I know that that will be a little bit daunting with A through J, but we'll follow that same process again. So Lisa, I'll turn it over to you, and when we finish up 5A, we'll open up for comment. We'll follow that path going forward. So I will leave it to Lisa. Take over.
Thanks, Kate. And I'm going to punt number A over to Doug.
Good morning, everyone. This is Doug Smith, Bureau Counsel. I haven't really prepared anything in addition to the memo that was sent out, and so I thought I would just open this up to questions. I thought the memo was fairly straightforward, but if anybody needs some clarification on something or has some questions about the analysis, please let me know.
This is Margaret Ryder. Just for clarification, the memo addressed, I believe, F1A, but didn't really speak to B or C. And just for clarification, as I understand it, if a student has a student loan or a grant, something that's paid in connection with the student's attendance at the institution, which would, include federal student loans and private ones for going to a school, even if it included money for something other than the school. Basically, if a student is eligible under the criteria, that student's economic loss would include the principal, the entire grant amount, the interest and fees on the loan, and so on. So if a student, so I guess what I'm saying is that your analysis really affects only students who are buying something for school, not from the school, and didn't have a student loan or grant that they used to pay for that. Would that be correct?
It's Doug. I don't know if you want me to jump in, but I can probably help a little bit with that one. I think we may have lost Doug.
Part B and C cover specifically expenses related to private or government student loans and third-party payments. And you are correct that the memo focused primarily on F1A, the definition, how the definition of economic loss itself changed. And this comes in effect if someone, say for instance, had a grant and received $3,000 and spent it on school expenses, that would be reimbursed. If they, in addition, then had other things that weren't paid for with that money and tried to cover the economic loss, that's sort of the basis of the memo. So you're correct in part, Margaret.
Okay, great. So I think basically in probably 90% of the cases, if a student has a grant or loan, that's what they're using to buy those things that they need in order to go to school, even if it's not paid to the school. So I think that would be the unusual circumstance in which a student is actually not using that grant or loan to provide those things that would even come into play. All right, thank you very much.
No problem. Anybody else have any questions? Anybody else read the memo? Just kidding.
Mm-hmm. I did. It was great work. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Doug. It was really helpful. Does anybody else have any questions about the economic loss memo that Doug put together? All right. Well, so then what I will do is open it up to public comment as to this agenda item. So if anyone in the audience would like to have a public comment about 5A, please feel free.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5A, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your web screen. And it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment, individual identified as Elizabeth Ducher. All right, Elizabeth, you will be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now. Elizabeth, if you are currently speaking, it looks like we cannot hear you. Co-moderator, could we get the technical slide up for microphones? I believe it's slide 25.
Can you hear me now?
Yes, we can hear you.
Oh, awesome. Okay.
Let's go ahead and start your timer.
Okay, sorry about that. It's very important that the term economic loss be interpreted as broadly as possible in order to give as many students as possible economic relief through the stress. Unfortunately, I do not know what Doug's memo said. Is it possible for Doug's memo to be shared with the public?
Yes, my memo was part of the, sorry, this is Doug Smith. My memo was part of the public meeting materials for this meeting, and they're available to the public.
Do you know where those are located?
I'm not sure. I would have to defer that to one of our more technical people that post the public meetings. I don't know if anybody else on the panel knows that answer.
Elizabeth, if you're on the BPPE website, there is, at the bottom of the site, there is a tab or a link to advisory committee. And if you go into the advisory committee link, it actually shows the dates of the meetings in a chart, and it'll say the date, and then it will have a link to agenda and materials. And so you should be able to access it directly through the Bureau's website.
All right, thank you.
Thanks, Kate.
You got it. Any other questions relating to agenda item 5A?
This is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
Sorry, my printer's not working, so I have to actually use the PDF and scroll up and down every time I want to look at the agenda. Apologies for the slight delay as I do this. Agenda item 5B, update on fee audit. I will turn it over to the Bureau for agenda item 5B.
Thanks, Kate. This is Lisa Rafferty. An update for the fee audit is that the auditor has finished his analysis and the report is under review. It should be available in the near future. We're taking our time to review the recommendations and taking into consideration all aspects of the fee impacts to the industry as well as to the students. We want to make sure we get it right before we completely finalize it. So it should be in the very near future and definitely by the next meeting.
Thanks, Lisa. Anyone on the committee have any questions or comments about agenda item 5B before we open it to public comment?
Yes, what does the very near future mean? And as soon as that is ready, would you go ahead and send that out to the members of the committee, even if it is quite a ways before the next meeting, please?
Right, Margaret, I don't have an actual date. It's going through a process, but definitely as soon as it's ready to be released, we'll send it out to you.
Right, I was just looking for an estimate. You know, the next meeting is not until February something. So are we talking maybe we'll get it in December or not until January or really not until right before the next meeting? Or you just don't know, really can't?
I don't have a date for you at this time, but as soon as I get one, I'll definitely get it out to you.
Great, thanks.
Thank you.
Anyone else on the committee with questions for Lisa? All right, hearing none, can we please open public comment again for item 5B?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 5B, please click on that icon with a question mark up in the square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Excellent. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is item 5C, update on the Bureau's IT system project. So I will open it up to the Bureau for that update.
Hi, this is Sean O'Connor. I'm going to present this update on behalf of the Bureau. So I just want to say good morning, committee members, Bureau staff, and members of the public. I serve as the project director for your business modernization project, and I'd like to give you an update on the project status, functionality implemented to date, and what we have planned for the future. And then I'll entertain whatever questions the committee members have after my update. So first, I want to do a bit of review and some context setting because it's been a few months since I've presented before this committee. The software and system integrator assisting us on this project is a company called Inluman, and they have implemented their software at other state government entities throughout the U.S. The project has branded the system as Connect, as it offers the opportunity for the organization to connect more effectively and efficiently with their licensees and consumers and students. BPPE is one of 4 programs that is included in this implementation effort, and they all share project costs appropriate to their complexity and size. Our project began in late January of 2020, And after approximately 7 months of development and testing effort, we implemented our first major software release in mid-September. And with this software release, BPPE can now accept online non-accredited school applications, display that applications that's been submitted online status to individuals who have applied, and also communicate with the applicant and other representatives, other individuals associated with the application via email and text messages to notify them of missing application items or components of the application that require approval. With this release, BPPE also implemented an online complaint form as well for the public. For our next product increment, which is our terminology we use for software releases, it is scheduled for January. And we are working right now with your staff to refine the existing online application to streamline some of the functionality related to it. And we're also working on completing the complaint investigation back office process in the system so that the system can be used to entirely process complaints through the investigation phase. We are also working on some other enhancements to other minor aspects of the system, as well as addressing any urgent items that are identified in production so that we can get those fixed in parallel with these larger software releases. I wanted to give you an update about, from a cost perspective, as with state IT projects, that is obviously something that we want to keep our eye on. Thankfully, we have a good story to tell with our project. So to date, the project is trending towards coming in at under budget. And we are about, just to give you a sense of how that trend is looking, we're about more than halfway through the project's planned 18-month schedule, and we've only expended about 34% of our allowed budget to date. So despite being over 50% of our schedule, we are only expending about 34, have only expended about 34%. The total project costs for the project came in, were established prior to the project starting in January and budgeted for. That was about $13.3 million that, again, that is split across 4 different programs over the project period. And that number is a little inflated just for the committee's context, because that includes staff dollar amounts or staffing costs related to redirected staff. So staff that are already budgeted for in the Bureau's budget, redirected staffing and IT support like myself, Robert Bales, your product owner, as well as the other subject matter experts from the Bureau are included in that $13.3 million figure. So it's a little inflated due to that fact. I wanted to close out the update with just an acknowledgement of all the hard work that has gone into this project, particularly over the last, I would say, 3 to 4 months, as we had a lot of effort around testing prior to our first major software launch, and your staff participated quite successfully in that testing, and were also active participants in our post-launch stabilization activities that have gone pretty well. And, you know, the strategy of this project really is to collaborate and work as a group with the business side, which is your BPPE staff and leaders, to help set the priorities for the project. And the technical and organizational change management staff from the department side are there to advise and execute against those priorities. And, you know, while I've given a largely positive update on our project here to date, which is an accurate reflection of where we are at, just because we've had so much success doesn't mean that this work is easy. It requires a tremendous amount of dedication and a lot of folks working outside of their normal comfort zone of processing school applications or processing complaints from students. So, but your staff have done a tremendous job in helping us out there. And I wanted to actually single out a few folks who participated on this project extensively and provided invaluable feedback, and that is Robert, our product owner, who has done a great job since even before the project started in advocating on behalf of the Bureau, as well as Clarissa, one of your enforcement managers, and Erica, one of your licensing managers, who've really been able to work with the development team to ensure that what we put in place really matches what their vision is, and then also advocates on behalf of the Bureau when things that get put in, even if we plan for them to work a certain way, in practice don't quite pan out the way we think it will, and then they work with us to make those pivots and adjustments to make sure we get things tuned and working well. I look forward to continuing to work with the Bureau staff as we continue to add more functionality to the system through the remainder of our project period. Our project period will go through August of next year, and then from there we'll have 1 year of enhanced maintenance services where we'll have still a pretty significant vendor presence to help us to continue to enhance and stabilize the system as we transition during that period as well to training state IT staff on how to maintain the system moving forward to ensure we can get the benefits of this better functionality at a more cost-effective strategy of having state IT maintain a system, which is a process that we've successfully implemented on previous systems here at DCA as well. That concludes my update, and I am more than happy to answer any questions that the committee might have.
It's Sean. This is Lisa, and I just want to echo your feedback and praise of the staff. They've really been working hard, and we also want to thank you and all of your staff for all your hard work and dedication in helping us get through this process. So thank you.
Thank you for those kind words. I appreciate that.
And I would add on to what Lisa just said, because I know how much work this has been for everyone. So thank you all for putting in the work to get us into the 21st century. We really appreciate that. Anyone else on the committee have any questions for Sean or comments about the IT update before we open to public comment? All right, hearing none. Moderator, can you open the floor to comment on item 5C?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5C, please click on the icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit the requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you very much.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
Great. All right, the next item on our agenda is item 5D, annual reports. I will open up to the Bureau for an update on that item.
Good morning. I'm Robert Bales. I'm the Education Administrator for the Bureau. I'm Chief over the Annual Reports Unit and Quality of Education Unit. So I'll start off with Annual Reports Update. And I'm looking at page 26 of the printed packet. So for staffing, the ARU is staffed by a Staff Services Manager, Christy Forsell. We have an AGPA lead analyst and 3 staff services analysts, one of whom is not currently in office. We also have an office technician position, which is currently vacant for budget savings, help comply with governor's 5% reduction. So this year, the report's a little bit different, and I have briefed the committee earlier, a couple of times earlier, about requirements for Senate Bill 1348, which resulted in a new requirement which involves providing certain information about certain clinical sites. And I've listed them on my report. And then as a reminder, next year's report will include the same clinical sites, the same allied health programs that are included this year, plus an additional several programs that are also listed on my report. And then in 2021, The report will include, again, everything that's required this year, everything that will be required next year, and then any other programs that do not fall on this, on either of these two lists that have a required clinical component. Some of the things going on in ARU, we are trying to convert our in-person workshop to WebEx, so we're in the process of that. Staff is in the process of getting WebEx training and modifying our materials to fit an online form versus in person. Obviously, due to the restrictions and COVID, and trying to get away from traveling. We're also looking to do the same thing with the school performance fact sheet workshop. We've got available through WebEx. And the unit started proactive outreach to schools at around October 5th, which was the midway point in the reporting period. And I'll talk a little bit more about that in the next slide. So on page 27 of the report, it is the annual report submission stats. Now, I should note that this chart typically looks a little bit different in that we would have late submissions, numbers in late submissions, and numbers in did not submit. But because of the timing of the committee and the timing of the closing of the report period, we don't have the final numbers yet. So the portal opened August 3rd, which was a Monday. Typically, it opens on the 1st. But we weren't able to get the portal open until Monday, so we're giving the schools until December 3rd, which is Thursday, to submit their report and still have it counted on time. So this year, there were 919 schools that were identified as having to submit an annual report. And again, as of November 20th, when the materials were printed out, we had 174 on-time submissions. And again, no late submissions or did not submit yet because December 3rd was not here yet. On-time submission rate was about 19%. As an update, as of yesterday, the on-time submission rate was 39.6%, so quite a bit different than November 20th. At the bottom of the of page 27 of my report, the outreach results area. So again, we proactively reached out to all schools who did not submit or had not contacted us by October 5th, which again was the midpoint in the reporting period. For a couple different reasons. One being obviously COVID. We know that some schools are, even though they haven't surrendered their approval, they're technically not open. In that there might be a skeleton crew there, or one person, or that the institution might be closed and no one's there at that particular time. So we wanted to reach out as best we could and kind of confirm that schools still knew about their requirement to submit their annual report. And then also with the change and the addition of the allied health information that's required this year, we wanted to make sure that the schools understood that and that they were good to go in the reports. So we reached out, as I said, to all schools that had not submitted at that point. We made 430 contacts, so there were several schools obviously we just could not get a hold of. Of those 430 contacts, 224 folks basically said that they were working on their annual report. 4 said they needed assistance, which we followed up with. 2 at that point in time indicated that they were going to request for an extension of time. And about 200 of those schools, we still didn't go to status because the individual we spoke with wasn't sure, or was an individual from the admissions department or other reasons. So we continue to follow up with those schools. That is my report for the annual report.
Thanks, Robert. Does anybody on the committee have any questions for Robert specifically about agenda item 5D relating to the annual reports?
Yes, I think you may have said it. I was having a little trouble with my sound, but if you could just clarify. So all of the in-person workshops this year have been canceled since, I guess, about March or whenever. And you are starting at some point to be doing them on WebEx, and I'm wondering when you think you'll have that set up for the annual reports, the performance fact sheet, that kind of thing.
Well, I'd like to be able to give you a date, Margaret, but unfortunately, I'm not quite sure yet. I mean, the process takes some time. We have to obviously convert our materials to a WebEx type forum. And the team is extremely busy right now, obviously processing and reviewing the reports that are being submitted. So while it is a priority, it is something that we definitely want to get done. The resources are not really available to put on the project 100%. So that's kind of a roundabout way of saying I'm not sure, but we are working on it.
Hello, this is Joseph. I have a question as well. Given the new source of information that you're getting on clinical rotations for that subgroup of programs in this first year, what are you doing with that information, or how has that changed your process in terms of reviewing your incoming materials?
Well, the process for reviewing the information is relatively the same as the process for reviewing all other information. The institutions have to provide information specifically to their clinical site. It's hard to make up that information, and so we're reviewing it, we're entering it at this point, just like we would any other information. And then if something looks funny or there's missing information, then we reach back out to the school and validate the information, find out what where the error is.
And so a follow-up question, I'm curious, in the absence of certainty, are you not checking back against curriculum to see if the schools are submitting an appropriate number of clinical sites for their programs? You're just simply entering the information that they're submitting.
Well, so the annual review process is actually a two-step process. The first stage is what we call a quantitative review, which is basically making sure that if the school has 10 programs, they're submitting information on 10 programs. The qualitative review takes place a little bit later, and that's when we take a deeper dive. And again, if things look funny to us or there are red flags, we will request additional documentation from the school, maybe backup documentation, and review it more in depth at that point. So the same would be applied to this new information that's required on allied health programs.
Thank you.
Sure.
Any other questions from the committee on this item before we open it up for public comment? Okay. Moderator, can you open the floor to public comment on item 5D, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5D, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator, and it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Thank you very much. All right, the next item on our agenda, I think it's still you, Robert, 5E, Quality of Education Report.
That it is. So I'm on page 29 in the printed handouts. And I'll begin with staffing. The Quality of Education unit consists of an education administrator, myself. We have 3 senior education specialists and 2 education specialists, one of whom was just brought on board. Actually, she starts officially today. And an office technician. And I've included kind of a list of the Quality of Education unit responsibilities because we get asked a lot of questions from students about what it is we do and why their application has gone from licensing to the Quality of Education unit. So I've just listed those. I'm not going to speak to them, but just for information only. The bottom part of my report shows the number of and types of applications processed by the Quality of Education unit in the last 12 months, ending 11/15, November 15th. Of interest is the number of change of method of delivery applications, which you could probably understand why. We processed 71 of those during the last year, which is quite a bit higher than the previous year. We have a lot of schools, obviously, that are wanting to convert from an on-campus, on-ground instructional mode of delivery to an online method of delivery. So we've been keeping pretty busy. So if you look at the next page, page 30, so between March of 2019 and November of 2019, we processed 15 change of method of delivery applications. That same period this year, 63. That's quite a difference. Definitely keeping us busy. We also, Quality of Education unit also reviews non-substantive change notifications. Those that are involving quality of education. And so last year we processed, again, in that same time period, we processed 124 non-sub change notifications. So it's been a pretty big year for Quality of Education. The next page, status of SB 1247 institutions. This is pretty consistent with what I've provided in the past. It's just kind of an update. The first group of schools are the schools that were approved basically in 2015. They were already approved to offer degree programs, but they were not accredited. There were 142 schools identified, and you can see the chart that shows the current status of all of those schools. We do have 13 institutions that are currently on an extension, so they did not achieve accreditation by July 1st of this year, but we gave them an extension because they are making solid progress, and it appears based on the progress that they're making and the information that we've received from the accreditors that they can become accredited in less than 2 years, which is the maximum extension time. The next page shows the second group of SB 1247 schools. These are provisionally approved, so these are the schools that were approved after January 2015 to offer two degree programs maximum. We had a total of 59 of those schools so far, and we have 36 that are currently pursuing accreditation. Either they are pre-accredited and they're pursuing accreditation, or they are pursuing pre-accreditation first. The very last slide is a chart. The committee asked me for this information, I think, at our last meeting. This is a breakdown of the 43 institutions that were under SB 1247 that did achieve accreditation. Now there are 43 because it includes 38 of the original 142 and 5 of the provisionally approved institutions. As you can see, WASC, TRACS, and DIAC are the kind of the top 3 accreditors chosen. So that is the end of my report.
Thanks, Robert. Does anybody on the committee have any questions regarding item 5E?
This is Margaret, and the changes in the method of instruction, which, as you say, makes sense. There's a lot of people trying to do it online now. Are those dealt with as temporary or permanent changes? And the reason I'm asking is, as I've mentioned in the past, I think that there has been a sense and maybe some evidence suggesting that fraud tends to show up more when schools are providing distance education, and that it's much harder to actually see what they're doing. And so I'm a little concerned about having a lot of programs switch to distance education without, on a permanent basis. And so I'm just wondering if any of those are being done on a temporary basis or if those are all permanent changes.
Sure. They are, unless the school indicates that that they don't plan on doing that on a permanent basis, typically because they have a program that that has an approval authority in the state that doesn't allow them to do it permanently. Unless that is the case, then they are permanent. So most of the schools' applications that we receive are for a permanent change. And just so you know, we share the same concerns, Margaret. And one of the things that my team does is, in addition to reviewing the things that we would typically review in an education program, we require access to the learning management system as a student, and we observe the class. We observe the instructor, we observe the students, we review the educational materials. It's kind of a lengthy process, but we also want to make sure that schools are doing the right thing by the students, and the students are getting what they're paid for, and the school is not just quickly going to Zoom without attention to any of the requirements that go along with that. So we have been doing a very thorough job of making sure that it is a quality program, and that the school is complying with all the regulations, but also making sure that it is a quality program. Hopefully that answers your question.
I really appreciate that. Thank you, Robert.
Sure.
And I would just add, Margaret, just so you're aware, there was, the Bureau was able to provide some flexibility to institutions in the first few months, because obviously schools, especially in certain parts of California, were required to close. Like, they could not be physically in their buildings. And so the Bureau provided flexibility for the first few months where they could essentially platform their programs online just so that students could continue to participate. But the Bureau, and Robert, correct me if I'm wrong, as of July, told every institution that was offering programs online due to COVID that they had to apply for approval to provide distance education programs. There was no choice. So while I understand your concern about institutions, moving online, it wasn't like the schools wanted to do this. Schools really had no other option if they wanted to continue offering their programs but to go to the Bureau for approval as a distance education program. So on a go-forward basis, they have that option to continue. I think, as Robert pointed out, the likelihood is once, God willing, things get back to some semblance of normalcy, and schools can open up their buildings and have students back in, that they would still have the option for online, but most of them, I think, would want to the extent they can, get back into their buildings. But I don't want there to be some misconception that this was done because schools wanted to have a distance education approval. For most schools, they did this by necessity. And so I wouldn't, from a, concern about fraud or a concern about how the schools are delivering those programs, I just wanted to make sure it was clear that this was not, I would not perceive this as being an excuse for students or schools to go online to, do anything other than continue to offer the programs they were already offering, because there was no other option.
I understand that. My concern is just we don't really, I guess, have an option unless the school specifically says so to grant them a temporary approval to go online for a period, whatever, a year, 2 years, or something like that. So that's my concern, is that once they're online, the good schools, as you say, will go back to being in person. The ones I'm concerned about is the ones that would see that as an opportunity to do less and make more.
This is David Weiss. You're going to have schools all over the country conducting business online now. This obviously happened all over the country. So I don't think it's going to be the California schools that you're going to have a big problem with. It's going to be these online schools that are going to pop up. They may not even be U.S.-based schools.
Oh, yes. I understand, and I agree. It's a big concern.
I think if it gives you any comfort, Margaret, I can tell you that the schools in California who are Bureau approved have gone through this process of getting their distance education programs approved, just as using the same process that the Bureau normally uses for this kind of change. So, Robert showed us the 15 last year, 63 this year, but they still went through the same process of doing what Robert described, which is, actually enrolling in, being provided access as a student so they can sit in and see how the classes are run and experience the management system and experience the interaction. So they're doing a very thorough review of how the programs and courses are being delivered, which I think is actually unique as to a lot of the other states in the country, just as David's saying, because a lot of other states provided this sort of, you can go online for the next year without an additional approval, where the Bureau actually required an additional approval and review. So we're doing more here to, provide that protection than I think in a lot of other places.
Right, I understand. That's great. And I agree with, I think it was David. The issue is a lot of out-of-state schools providing distance education, not only out of state, but out of country.
Any other questions or comments on this item before we open it up to the public comment option? All right, thank you, Robert. Moderator, can we open up public comment for item 5E?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 5E, please click on that icon with the question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access this Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel? Oh, I apologize. We have one individual who's requested public comment. Individual identified as Damon Fujet. Damon, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Hello, thank you. My name is Damon Fugit. I'm with DeHart Technical School here in Modesto, California. Prior to the pandemic, we were a 100% in-person training institution. We have found, mostly by force, of course, that the hybrid model has actually been quite good for us. I don't know that we would purposefully go back to 100% training programs because it's made travel easier on our students. We get a number of students who come from 40 and 50 miles away who are county sponsored. Basic transportation costs, gas, et cetera, have always been issues for them. And so a lot of ways our attendance is up, our participation is better. Our labs on the days that we have them on campus have been substantially stronger. In addition, I believe it was Doug made a comment regarding some of the accreditors and the pop-up, the schools that would be popping up. I have seen that a lot of the accreditors are actually giving substantive pressure on the schools. Both myself and some of my colleagues have expressed how our accreditors are basically telling us that we have to either go into an IDL program formally or have a hybrid program formally, and that those have to be completed by the end of the year since we don't have an extension from the feds. So we're really in kind of a tricky situation because, 6 months ago, I never would have imagined that we would have stayed in this model. And now I'm kind of obviously flipped around the other way. So I'm sure there's other schools that are dealing with this. It really hasn't changed our financial models at all. It really hasn't changed much about our kind of 50-50 nature. We're still doing about 50% lab and 50% lecture. It's just now that that lecture is online, students are reporting increased satisfaction with that. That's all.
All right, this is the moderator. It looks like there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Thank you, yes. And thank you, Damon, for your input. That was very helpful. Okay, so the next item on our agenda is item 5F, Compliance and Discipline Report, which looks like it has a few subsections. So we'll do F, Romanets 1, 2, and 3 at this time. Bureau, over to you.
This is the moderator. I have promoted Beth Danielson up to a panelist. I believe she mentioned that Beth Scott is with her. Beth, you are currently muted if you are currently speaking.
Hello, good morning. This is Beth Scott. I'm the Enforcement Chief over Compliance and Discipline. I will be speaking to you today regarding Agenda Item 5F, beginning on page 34. So I'm going to speak today about compliance first, and that's page 35. We have begun inspecting again. We started slowly and safely in September. Since January, we have completed 121 inspections. Currently, they are going well. We are also working on a WebEx so we can continue our compliance workshop. As Robert, I do not have a definite date for completion, but it is being actively worked on by staff now. So we're hoping to have that up and ready in the near future to allow schools to attend the workshops without the travel that is involved in that. On discipline, starting on page 37, we have 8 accusation cases at the Attorney General's office and 4 statement of issue cases at the Attorney General office. Moving to cite and fine on page 39, since January 1st, the citation unit has issued 319 citations. And that's to a total of 313 schools. At the bottom of page 39, the most common violations for citations are listed. Is there any questions on my report today?
I was surprised to see you doing this again. You're actually coming to my school tomorrow.
Oh, awesome.
Unfortunately, I won't be there. I have to quarantine. But the team's ready.
Okay, thank you. Appreciate that.
Does anybody else have any questions for Beth on this section of the agenda? All right, Beth, I'm not sure if you're covering 5, Romanet 2, and 3 as well. We might as well just do all of F before we open it up to public comment.
That was all inclusive of 2 and 3.
Okay, great.
Thank you.
Thank you. Does does anybody have any other comments from the committee relating to item F? All right, hearing none. Moderator, can you open the floor to public comment for item 5F, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 5F, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. It looks like we have an individual who has requested public comment. Give me 1 second while I get my timer up and running. Individual identified as Grant Elliott. Grant Elliott, I see you logged in here twice, so I'm going to unmute one of them and hope that's you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. I'll go ahead and
great.
start the timer now.
Thank you. It's a very short comment. I do question the wisdom in the time of a greatly increased COVID cases to continue face-to-face inspections. But of course, as you all know, LA just went to a stay-at-home order again. Thank you.
All right, this is the moderator. It looks like there are no further requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our next agenda item, which is 5G, Complaint and Investigation Report. I'll open the floor to the Bureau.
Hi, this is Beth Danielson, and I will be reporting on complaint investigations. We are starting on page 41. If you look at the first chart, complaints closed. Through Q3 of this year, we have so far closed 758 complaints. If you look at the third chart, it explains the case disposition. 6% of the cases were referred to discipline for further action. 3% were compliance obtained. 13% mediated settlement and resolved by the school. 6% involved closed cases and were sent to the strict unit. 23% were non-jurisdictional and were referred to other agencies or were exempt institutions. 30% of the complaints were unsubstantiated. And after investigating the complaint, in 5% of the cases, we found insufficient evidence to confirm a violation. 14% of the complaints were closed for other reasons, which includes withdrawn complaints, duplicate entries, consolidated cases, and complaints against non-operational institutions. In the last chart on the bottom left of page 41, we have, this is a little snippet brief, we have received 751 complaints during quarters 1 through 3. And of those 751 complaints, that was representative of, the schools represented were 425. And of the 751 complaints, 120 of those complaints were COVID related. If you look at the first chart on page 42, you can see that our days to close cases continues to decrease. Through September, we closed 69% of our cases within 90 days, which is up from 47% in 2019 and 29% in 2018. We have also closed 85% of our cases within 180 days. And the bottom chart on page 42, the top 5 allegations remain the same that I reported in quarter 2. At the top of page 43, you can see the complaints we received. As I stated before, we've received a total of 751 complaints through the third quarter of this year. And during this time frame, 95% of the complaints we received were externally generated. The top of page 44, this represents our pending caseload. As of the end of quarter 3, we had 226 complaints pending. And if you look at the cases aged over 2 years, of the 9 cases that are between 2 and 3 years old, 5 of those are being monitored pending an external investigation. 4 of them are currently being investigated, and the 2 cases in the aged 3 to 4 year category are also currently being monitored pending investigation by a law enforcement agency. And on page 45, this represents the student impact the Complaint Investigations Unit has achieved through advocacy on behalf of students. Through quarter 3, investigators' advocacy on behalf of students resulted in a total of $108,814.13 in refunds to students or to their federal student aid account. And that's all I have for you. Thank you.
Thank you, Beth. Does anyone on the committee have any questions for Beth on her report?
This is Lee. Oh, go ahead, Margaret.
Go ahead, Lee.
Okay, I just had a question about the COVID-related complaints, and if you have any feedback on like what type of complaints those are, if you have any more detail about those.
Well, we have, it's approximately 27% of the complaints that we have received that are COVID-related. I'm sorry, 63% of the COVID-related complaints have been jurisdictional, and we've explained that of these non-jurisdictional complaints, we have referred them to other agencies, including Department of Public Health, other boards and bureaus, U.S. Department of Education, and the complaints that we did receive that were within our jurisdiction were regarding students' difficulty obtaining transcripts and diplomas, inability to drop classes, struggles completing assignments during lockdown, students being terminated, programs being canceled, lack of agreed upon hands-on training, lack of quality instruction, not receiving funds, and improper school closures.
So it's pretty varied. It really,
yeah,
it really
does.
Yeah, the COVID, I just was curious how specific that COVID connection had to be, but it sounds like it's pretty broad. Thank you.
It is. And as I said, a large portion of the complaints that we have received have been non-jurisdictional as well.
This is Margaret. Getting your new IT system up. There will be a lot of fact. Just for example, the amount of money refunded. It would be good to know if that was refunded because of a mediation or because of citations or what action was involved for them to get that money back. It also would be good to know what was the amount of money requested compared to the amount of money that was actually recovered. And the other one, of course, that we've wrestled with before is just looking forward to a lot more detail about what it means when there are fraud and so forth, and what it means when a complaint is not substantiated. What are the agencies that are found to be the proper agency when they're non-jurisdictional? So I don't know if that's something we can maybe have some more input on before those changes are finalized, but that's something that I think is really critical going forward with the IT thing. So nothing that needs immediate action or response today, but just something to keep an eye on and try to bring it back to our attention when you are starting to input what it is that you folks want in the system going forward.
Margaret, this is Lisa. We very much appreciate your comments and look forward to formal recommendations from the committee on the information you'd like to have included in the next meeting.
That sounds like something maybe for an agenda when we get to that, to add that to the next meeting.
Yeah, Margaret, if you can just make a note of it, and when we get to the end, when we put together our suggested agenda items for the next meeting, so we'll add that to that. today.
Hello, this is just a question for Beth. Can you give us a representative example of a non-jurisdictional complaint that would be referred to the local health department, for example?
So we received a number of complaints when schools were still operating. However, they were in a jurisdiction where the county health department had said they should not be operating, and that is outside of our jurisdiction. So that was a big one.
Got it. Thank you.
Sure. Or, students attending and believing that somebody may have had COVID or may have been exposed, or really a lot of students just concerned about attending in person prior to schools having gone online, or schools returning to in-person before they should have been. Does that answer your question?
It does, yes. Thank you.
Sure.
Does anybody else have any other questions on this item before we open it to public comment? All right, hearing none. Moderator, can you open the floor to public comment on item 5G, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5G, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please. Thank you.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, so can we move to the next slide, because I think we are on, there we go. Item 5H, licensing report. I'll turn it over to the Bureau.
Good morning, this is Ebony. I'm primarily going to be looking at pages 47 and 48 because the pages after that are just a compilation of what's on those two slides. So as of November 1st, we received 410 applications. As you can see, the largest of that being changes for schools approved by means of accreditation. I would say that over half of those, if not more, are for the distance ed changes in modalities. As of January 1st, we had 253 applications, and you can see as of November 1st, we have 435. On the bottom box, the oldest pending applications, I'd like to make a note that the oldest full app in the queue, which was October 17th, 2019, as of the 20th of this month, has been abandoned because there was no response. So that is no longer valid. I would like to add, as of today, the licensing unit has processed 106 applications for distance ed for institutions approved by means of accreditation, and we have about 53 pending. I did want to make a comment. Earlier, Margaret asked about temporary versus permanent approval. As Robert stated, yes, most of those changes are permanent. However, the accreditors do allow institutions, especially those approved by means of accreditation, to make a temporary change, but that does not mean that they do not have to submit an application. So they are still going through the same process. However, some of them, at least at this point, have chosen to make that change temporary. And if we go to page 48, just an overview of our location and approval types. We currently have 1,018 main locations, 370 branches, and 528 satellites. Not sure what's going on with the slide, sorry. And for those approval types, 421 of them are approved by means of accreditation. 559 of them are full approvals. There are 2 conditional approvals and 36 provisionals. And as of November 1st, we have approved 59 out-of-state registered approvals. So does anyone have any questions? That concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. Does anyone on the committee have any questions regarding Ebony's report before we open up for public comment?
This is David Weiss. The out-of-state approvals, that's the one where they're just putting in the $2,000 application fee. Is that what that is?
Sorry, offhand, I don't know the price, but yeah, those are out-of-state institutions that offer distance ed to California students that aren't exempt from our approval.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ebony. Moderator, can we open the floor to public comment on this portion of the report, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 5H, please click on the icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. And I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit the requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, thank you very much.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
Thank you. All right, so we're up to agenda item 5I. I would like to request, if the rest of the committee is okay with it, a quick 5-minute break, just so we can, I need some coffee, and I also need a bio break. So if everyone's okay with that, we could come back at 5 minutes past 11. Is that acceptable?
That sounds great. Thank you.
Sounds great.
All right. Thanks, guys. See you in 7 minutes. Thank you. Hi, everybody. Welcome back. Thank you for the quick break. Moving on to our next agenda item, which was, agenda 5I, OSAR reports. I presume that will be Scott, so I will open it up to Scott.
Before we move to agenda item 5I, could we have the committee members verbally state that they're back?
Sure.
Thank you.
David Weiss is present.
Thanks, David.
Margaret Ryder.
Joseph Holt.
Thomas Wong.
Kevin Powers present.
Lee Farron present.
Thanks. I think that's everybody. Scrolling through my list here. Yes. It looks like all of the members of the committee are back. So with that, our quorum is reestablished. We will move on to item 5I. OSAR. Thank you.
Thank you. This is Scott Valverde. Good morning, everyone. It's always good to be the first speaker after everyone gets to get caffeinated and stretch their legs a little bit. So welcome back. I'll be speaking to attachment 5I in your packet. I believe it's page 58 and 59, which are formatted to align with our first of 2 of 3 OSAR agenda items, which are the overview of our activity summary and school closure outreach. And then the third item is a presentation of a video that short video that we'd like to show you, and then we'll answer any questions that you have. So chart A, the blue and white chart in front of you that I've provided in the past, provides information on OSAR's proactive, or what we call informed choice type of outreach activities. Chart B, leading into the following page, includes information on our closed school workshops. And the data provided covers fiscal year 2021 is how we formatted it this time. So it's basically from July 1 through November 24th, which was the date we drew down the most recent data. So essentially the first 5 full months of the fiscal year. In 2021 so far, OSAR has conducted or participated in a total of 25 student outreach events. I think we were at about 5 or 6 at the last advisory meeting, to give you an idea of our ramping up our activities as the year gets going here through the fall. That total figure is comprised of 22 outreach events listed in Chart A and 3 closed school events listed in Chart B. The charts provide for you the title of the event, the type of the event, the date and location. And of course, during the COVID crisis, these quote-unquote locations have all been virtual. So really the location, I thought about that this morning, the location listed in the chart is really just the location of the event organizer, or for example, with CalTAP, they're closed events for one particular military installation. So wherever that's located is the location that's listed there. But in reality, everything that you're looking at was done virtually through either Zoom or WebEx or Teams. So all virtual. So that's just an overall cumulative summary of the events, and you can review the charts to see what we've been doing. You can see it's been very heavily weighted towards CalTAP for a couple of reasons. I mean, I think of all of our partners, outreach partners, they're the ones who probably reacted the most quickly in terms of converting workshops and events that they've done historically in person, online. Done a really good job logistically coordinating those events and putting them all together. In fact, the attendance has at minimum held steady, and in many cases gone up from previous workshops that they've done. So that's the reason for that. And also it's just most of the college fairs and things like that we've historically done, the Black College Expos, the Cash for College, the Mexican Consulate, et cetera, are all generally historically held in the spring. So you'll see more activity pop up in the spring as they figure out their plan to transition to online, which most of them are doing. Pre-COVID, our events usually consisted of staff, traveling to a location, setting up tables or whatever resources we were given, doing breakout sessions, having one-on-one meetings with students, et cetera. And now, again, that's all been done remotely through, just webinar presentations. A lot of the new platforms and technology that we've been exposed to have some pretty cool functionality in terms of doing breakout sessions and calendaring and scheduling, conferences and events online has definitely been something that we've been exposed to in terms of the variants and types of technology and functionality that's out there. Let's see, what else? One update on the outreach side that I'm very happy to share that's taken place since the last time we've met is we convened a meeting of all of our outreach partners, most of which are called out in our statute specifically, but we had K-12 representatives, the Community College Chancellor's Office, U.S. Department of Education, the California Student Aid Commission, CalVet, and then April and I from our office all got together and sort of had a summit type of thing where we just talked about how we're dealing with, connecting with students in our various segments, how we're connecting with them, how often we're connecting with them, how we're all transitioning to an online model, share some, best practices and ideas and just shared opportunities, opened up a couple of opportunities for us as well that were very tangible, so that was great. And the biggest takeaway from that is that we got a commitment from all of those entities to meet with us in a convened setting like that on a biannual basis to discuss sort of the hot button issues of student outreach in California. So I'm pretty excited to sort of take the lead role in steering that group. On the closed school side, as you can see, we've only had 3 school-specific workshops where we've actually calendared a specific date and had a WebEx and met with students from one particular school that had closed. That's only happened 3 times so far in the first 5 months of this fiscal year. I mean, the trend has definitely been towards, a higher number of very small closures with a small number of students impacted. Not really any large school closures of note. We anticipate that will likely, that trend will likely has a life cycle and will probably end at some point, and we'll start seeing those large closures again, especially as we communicate more with the Department of Education and hear more about struggles that are going on with schools and their participation in Title IV under the sort of COVID issues. There are definitely schools that are out there that are at vulnerable, at least at risk of closure for sure. So we are tracking, but the bottom line is the bottom line is, and we've been, basically spending resources preparing for that. We're going to be doing some more staff training for closed school workshops and things like that. But most of the impact that we've been able to see and have via OSAR services have been, these smaller closures where we're able to meet with students individually, one-on-one, virtually, phone, email, and kind of work through their situation without having to do a full-blown workshop. And I also can say that in the next agenda item, you will see Yvette's update on STRIF, and despite what I just said, small number of closures, small number of workshops, we've seen a significantly large influx in the number of incoming STRIF claims, which I do believe is directly attributable to all of the outreach that we've done, proactive outreach we've done around STRIF and prior closures as well. So we are definitely seeing that quantified in terms of the number of STRIF claims that have been coming in. We are also planning, given that trend I just described, we are planning and will very soon calendar a virtual event where we'll basically be opening it up to any student from any school who needs OSAR services. So not closed and specific to a specific roster from a specific closure, but basically we're going to put it out to any students who need any of OSAR services, regardless of what school they attended. Kind of like an hour or two with OSAR virtually. We'll have all of our staff available. It's kind of a virtual replication of what we've done in the past with our STRIF acceleration workshops that we've done in the past at different geographic locations. So that will hopefully happen December or January at the latest. I'll be able to report back out on that at the next advisory meeting. We are continuing to do outreach for former Corinthian students who may benefit from the expanded eligibility pathways that were developed in Assembly Bill 1346 that we spoke about earlier in terms of the memo regarding the bill's impact on the definition of economic loss that Doug spoke to. The bill also, for those of you who are not aware, expanded the eligibility pathway for former Corinthian students back to for any students who were attending during as late as January 1, 2010. So regarding that change, we've done, and I talked about this a little bit at the last meeting, so the updates there are we've done some press on that, press releases. We've shot a video going over the overview of that. We've ran a social media campaign that's ongoing. One of the most tangible and exciting outcomes of that is we've made contact with the Student Aid Commission, and they have agreed to help us with providing some information regarding OSAR and STRIF for former Corinthian students directly on our behalf based on contact information they have that we may not have using their Cal Grant database as sort of a data source. So we're pretty excited about that. We're working on the mechanics and the logistics. Overall, I would say we haven't seen a huge impact yet from 1346 in terms of Corinthian students, although, again, those closures happened a long time ago, and in Yvette stats, you'll see that fiscal year to date, I think we've received 4 or 5 new applications from Corinthian students. So again, where we're really seeing the impact are on other school closures that have happened prior, to the COVID crisis. Just spending time, doing more outreach, doing more social media, getting our word out there, word of mouth. We've just seen a very large influx of STRIF claims from other students from other closures. So we're pretty excited about that. And then the last item before we moved on to visually seeing it in number 3 is the video that we've created. I think I spoke about its development in the last meeting, and just basically within the last 24 hours, so this is hot off the press, we've finalized the final version for soon-to-be distribution, so we'll talk more about its impact in the next meeting, but we have worked with our Office of Public Affairs to script and film and edit and develop a video that's a direct result of the COVID-19 crisis and our restrictions on travel and our inability to do in-person workshops. And then hopefully it'll be a resource that will have value beyond that as well, where if students are not able to come to one of our events or came to one of our events and need a refresher, or just going to our website looking around for assistance and click on it, it gives them about 5 minutes of content. So it's definitely a truncated version of what we would normally provide in an in-person workshop, but I think it's a pretty good reflection of a lot of the key talking points when we do our presentations. And we anticipate using it in a lot of different ways, both, like I said, in lieu of our ability to do an in-person workshop, but also as supplemental material after a workshop, or as a student is considering their options when a school closes, or filling out a STRIF claim, et cetera. So I think if it's okay with Kate and the chair, probably be okay just to show the video now and then open it up for any questions on all 3 of my items. Does that work? Okay. So whoever has the controls there, we have about a 5.5 minute video. If you can go ahead and hit play and show that, I'd appreciate it. Hopefully it works. So I just wanted to, before we open up for questions, just put a lot of thanks out to everyone who made that happen. The Office of Public Affairs, our manager, April Oakley, did a lot of work on that, and as well as our on-air talent, which is one of my staff members, Janelle Quayle, did a great job as well. So we're really happy with how that came out. Hopefully you are all as well. The other thing I wanted to mention before that question even comes up is that it will be and is in the process of being converted over into a YouTube link that will have all the closed captions and be fully ADA compliant before we deploy it onto our website and the Bureau's website and start using it in earnest. But without anything further, that concludes my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you, Scott. Does anybody on the committee have any questions or comments about Scott's presentation?
Hi, this is Mark.
David Weiss. Scott, I think it was a great video. So I agree with you. It was just fantastic, and your staff deserves a lot of credit. And you started off talking about how it looks like there's going to be some large school closures coming up next year. Is this something the rest of the Bureau is working on, teach outs and whatnot? Or is this something, that was a big statement to make.
Yeah, it is definitely something that we are tracking as proactively as we can in terms of our normal communication channels with the U.S. Department of Education and accreditors, which are sort of pre-existing pre-COVID, where, we would get information about, schools that are either in some sort of disciplinary track or in risk of losing their accreditation and or Title IV funding. That level of communication has kind of happened already to date, so they're already there. And then additionally, like I said, in OSAR specifically, we've been having more communications with them. And what I basically stated is something that has just been shared sort of generally, even outside of that channel as well, that there are just a lot of visibility around schools potentially losing either their accreditation or Title IV moving forward, which has always been, like I said, sort of cyclical anyway, and there's always that sort of thread out there why we track that information as proactively as we can. And I'm just saying that there hasn't been any in a large gap as well, right? There just has not been any large Title IV closures now in quite some time. So there's a lot of unknown around COVID. I don't want to misstate that we believe that it definitely will happen, but it definitely potentially could happen. There's enough activity around different actions that are surrounding schools. There's a lot of potential change of ownerships and things like that are going on, mergers, schools converting to online, schools buying each other, just a lot of activity that has historically predated closures. So what we've done is basically prepared for that, built resources like this, doing staff training, trying to stay in good contact with enforcement around information they're getting as well. And then just be pleasantly surprised if it doesn't happen, but we need to be prepared for that to happen as one of the many impacts of COVID.
Well, a lot of the things you just described, I think that's just normal everyday activity in this sector for the last 20, 25 years that I've been in it. So, but if you are aware of potential closures, because really the only people who usually can help in a teach out or mass transfers is typically another proprietary school. So, I'm hoping that the Bureau is going to be very proactive. If they know about closures coming, not just, hey, this is the environment and it might happen, but if there's something going on, the time to help these students is now, not after the doors are already shut.
Definitely. I think we do that. I think our closed school unit and Best Shop is involved in that too, in terms of, and also quality of ed in terms of just, and licensing. A lot of the units are involved in, tracking, what we call, schools of concern for sure. And absolutely, part of that when schools actually establish a date and reach out to our closed school unit, we're looped into that. If we know that there's a date pending, then that's when we start looking at the solicitation of teach-out plans like you're talking about. Often the creditors and DOE are involved in that as well. So to answer your question, yes, we're being as proactive as we possibly can.
This is Margaret. I agree. I think that's great to get something like that out there. It had some good information. I have one concern, and I'm not sure. I'm having a little trouble with the sound cutting out from that video, so maybe it was there and I just didn't hear it. But the impression it gave me was you have 4 exclusive alternatives that, as opposed to here's 4 alternatives and you may be able to take advantage of more than one. For example, you start a teach out and it doesn't work out, so you're certainly entitled to do a STRIF claim. Or you have a student loan, but that's not covered all the expenses, you had additional expenses. Or, you know, and sort of maybe a little advice about if you've applied for a discharge and it's not happening, even though you've got 4 years, don't wait around. Go ahead and file your STRIF claim so it's in there in the queue, basically. Some precautions like that. I don't know if there's a way to have like a little preamble or post thing that goes with that. But if those were not clear and stressed there, I think those are really important things for students to understand.
Yeah, I mean, I think the 4 options that potential options that Janelle spoke to are the most common ones, and that, you know, given the limited amount of time and sort of a lot of thought was put into, you know, if you develop a 15-minute video that covers everything, you're going to maybe lose some value and equity in it, and that students won't sit through a 15-minute video. So we put a lot of thought into how much time and what were the most common points to hit on. But I do think there is an overarching, both the opening and closing, that, you know, if you were impacted by a closure, the best thing you can do is contact OSAR, and we can walk through your situation individually. Because you're right. I mean, if we were to go down every possible pathway that every student impacted closure, it would be a 2-hour video, because, you know, it could be, like you said, multiple combinations of those 4 or other options. So those are just kind of the most common ones that students face. It's based on a lot of feedback from, you know, what we've seen in-person workshops and the types of questions we consistently get and the issues we consistently face. But I do think, you know, this will be sent out. It'll be sent out with accompanying text that will go with the emails. There'll be accompanying text on the website itself. I don't think anything in there is incorrect or limiting in any way. It's all factual. It's just, yes, there could be many more ways that we could help students depending on where the pathway takes them, you know, and we know that every student's journey is a little bit different, especially when they've got multiple funding sources and, you know, they've transferred multiple times and, you know, have multiple loan servicers. I mean, it can get very convoluted. So I think the overarching filter is just, you've got a concern, you've got, you know, the funnel, we're trying to say, you've been impacted by one of these closures, contact OSAR. Please contact us and we can work with you individually. Because normally if a question like that came up, Margaret, in an in-person, then we would cover it while we're there before we ever left the location and meet with the student one-on-one. This can't replicate that, obviously, right? So we got to just hit on the high points and get them to contact us. But I do appreciate that. Like I said, I think anything that we can send out in terms of accompanying information would be helpful. But I do think it's got value.
Yeah, I wasn't suggesting that you include a lot of scenarios beyond what you did. What I was indicating is that as it's presented, at least the way I could understand it with the sound being a little bit cutting out, it made it appear to me that you had to choose one of those 4 alternatives. And I'm just looking for a line basically saying more than one of these may apply, or you may be eligible for more than one way, or you may have more than one way to deal with this, just so that they don't feel like, well, if I'm going to, you know, do a teach out, then that's the end of the road for me, or if I'm going to transfer, that's the end of the road, or if I'm going to apply for
Gotcha.
bit. That's all I'm saying. Just one something somewhere to indicate here's 4 things. All of or some more than one may apply.
Understood. Thank you.
Hi, this is Lisa. I just want to confirm if this is going to be a committee recommendation.
I think the video is fine the way it is. I mean, you're right. If you make it too long, you're going to miss out.
This is Lee Farron. I think the video, I appreciate the video a lot. I think it's really useful to get that information out there. I'm wondering if you have a plan. I know you said you're going to turn it into a YouTube link, but then in terms of distributing it kind of more widely or making sure, seeing if there's a way to kind of affirmatively get it to students as opposed to kind of passively waiting for students to find it. I wonder if there's a plan in place for that.
There is. So it's a little early in the process, but we are definitely working on a deployment plan. We're just buttoning it up in terms of a deliverable here very recently. But yes, we've had initial discussions about deployment and strategies, both, in terms of distribution through our website, the Bureau's website, our social media, and then obviously taking each individual closure and past closure on its own individual terms. If we're not going to be able to do a full-blown WebEx or a full-blown workshop for whatever reason, then we would get this out to the student roster that we have proactively as soon as we possibly can. There's some thought into, if we do a live workshop, then maybe the link would be in the corresponding follow-up emails with other resources that we may provide, like the copy of the STRIF application or OSAR's handouts, et cetera. Then we would include that link in any sort of leading narrative, as I talked about before. So each individual, like I said, closure and an event, we would probably take it individually, how we would use it. But the first phase for sure would just be promote it being uploaded to our website and the Bureau's website and put it out on our social media. And then we'll get back to you in terms of phase 2.
Sounds good. I think that those of us who are at, community service orgs, legal service orgs would be happy to distribute that as well.
That would be great. Thank you.
Thanks, everybody. Does anybody else have any comments or questions for Scott before we open the floor to public comment? All right, hearing none. Moderator, can you open the floor to discussion on item 5I, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 5I, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll go ahead and pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. Looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Thank you. The next item on our agenda is item 5J, Student Tuition Recovery Fund Report, and I will open it up to the Bureau to address that item.
Good morning. This is Yvette Johnson. I'm the manager of the Student Social Recovery Fund unit. And today I'm going to be speaking to the statistics you have on page 61 and 52 of the agenda. So we have this broken out by fiscal year. And as you can see from the chart, we have it broken down by the 2019 to 2020 fiscal year versus current, with July 1, 2020 to current. In 1920, we received 429 SHIF applications, and to date for this fiscal year, we received 474, which we've already surpassed the number of applications we received last year. For current, we have paid out 127 claims so far this year. Of those, we've also had 12 claims that were deemed ineligible, which means that the student did not meet any of the criteria set out in 94923 for the reimbursement from the Student Social Recovery Fund. And so far, we've denied 47 claims, and that was because once again, they didn't meet the criteria or they didn't have enough information to support the processing of their claims. We closed out 47 claims unable to contact, and that's after making numerous efforts to contact the claimant.
Excuse me, I'm sorry, but I'm having a very hard understanding you. Am I the only one?
I'm not having any trouble hearing her. Is anybody else?
No, I'm able to hear as well. Although I do get feedback, but I'm able to understand.
Okay. And outside the window, I'm in the office, and outside the window, they're doing the gardening. So you may hear the lawnmower out there, or the blower. And so far, we've closed 233 claims this year. For this fiscal year, we have 500 claims waiting in queue, and those are the claims that have not been assigned to an analyst yet. We have 125 claims that are currently being reviewed by analysts. 346 claims we're waiting for student response. That means that there are some deficiencies in the application, so we're waiting to get information from them. And there are 103 that the analysts have finished, and they've made their recommendation for either approval or denial. So far this year, we have paid out over $2 million in SHIF claims. And for this right now, after a claim is approved for payment by the Bureau, it goes over to the State Controller's Office. We currently have 22 claims over to the State Controller's Office waiting payment. If you move further down on the same page, on page 61, you'll see that our current fund balance is $19 million. And as you know, it states that when we reach $20 million, we will start collecting again. And more information will be provided on that in our next section, which is on the regulations. So the Bureau is currently working on the process to begin collecting SHIF assessments again. On page 62, we have the Student Social Recovery Fund. These are our large impact closures. The top box gives you the current large closure impact, and it's about, so far we paid out about $737,000 in SHIF claims to the large impact closures. And that's just for this fiscal year, but overall for the large impact closures, we've paid out over $4 million. Does anybody have any questions?
All right, I'm not hearing any. Thanks, Yvette. I think unless the committee has any questions, we can open the floor to public comment relating to item 5J. Moderator?
Oh, I apologize. I thought we were asking for comments from the Bureau.
No, we're done. We're already past that. So we can open the floor for 5J, please.
All right. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 5J, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access the Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator, and it looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
Great, thank you. Our next agenda item is item 6, which is a review of a packet of regulations. I think, Doug, unless you think otherwise, it probably makes sense to have the Bureau go through all 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the updates, and then we can do public comment following that. Does that work?
That makes sense to me.
Okay. All right, well, then I'll open it to the Bureau to address item 6, and we can do public comment at the conclusion of 6F.
Hi, Kate. This is Lisa, and I apologize ahead of time. I have the yard people outside blowing leaves, so it may interfere with my presentation. So bear with me, please. No worries. Before I get started on the regulation package, I just kind of want to hit on the Bureau updates. So I want to extend my gratitude to the Bureau staff who continue to work mostly remotely and diligently adapting to COVID-19 and the changes that come with that, as well as starting to learn a new IT system. And all of the chiefs who continue to work together in our strive to obtain Dr. Michael Marion's goal of going from good to great. We continue to work in his honor, and we miss him greatly. So I just want to thank all of the staff for their help. All right, moving on to the regulations. The first one is the English as a Second Language package, and that is on its final steps. It's with the Office of Administrative Law and with the Department of Finance for a final sign-off on that. Let's see, the second one is the application for verification of exemption. Updates to the application form are near completion. This has been a huge undertaking as there have been many changes to the form to accommodate the legislative changes, as well as making the form more user-friendly, easier to navigate with the numerous different exemptions. I think 12 different exemptions all in one application. And then moving on to number C, which is the strip fee increase. So the statute, California Education Code 94925, requires that the fund shall not exceed $25 million, and that if the fund drops below $20 million, the Bureau shall resume collecting the assessment. So as many of you already know, the strip assessment from 2010 to 2012 was $2.50 per $1,000 of tuition. In 2013 through 2014, it was reduced to 50 cents. And then we maxed out, we exceeded the 25 million. In 2015 to current, the assessment has been 0. So as Yvette has already provided you the information that we have recently dropped below the 20 million, therefore we are required to start the assessments up again. So the Bureau is currently working on turning on the assessments, and our proposal is to start the collection at the 50 cents where we turned it off, and that's the lowest amount that we've collected previously. And at that point, then we will monitor the impact of the collection as well as the impact of the extended eligibility to the Corinthian students. This will allow the Bureau time, we'll be in compliance with the requirements and allow us time to, like I said, evaluate the impact of both reassessing the STRIF amount as well as the impact to the extended eligibility. And then at that point, if need be, then we'll do a regulation package to for a different assessment amount if warranted. Okay, AB 1340, this requires the institutions to report student identification data to UPPE so that we can then run the information through EDD and verify student wage data for 2 and 5 years after graduation, and then we'll be posting it on the website. The collection of the data is contingent upon DCA's approval of an adequate computer system. And so at this point, we've reached out to public sectors, higher education systems that are currently collecting such data to see how they're collecting and how it's working. We're also monitoring the proposal being developed by the Cradle to Career Work Group, the SB 75, that will require all post-secondary schools in California to collect and report such data through a central resource. And that will determine, how our data system needs to be developed as well. And then moving on to AB 1344, this requires additional reporting by out-of-state institutions when registration or re-registering. The revisions to the registration form required by the statute are near completion. We are on track to having emergency regulations in place by the July 1, 2020 deadline. And then AB 1346 extends the eligibility for recovery from the student tuition recovery funds, and the revisions to the STRIP application form has been completed. We've submitted the regulatory package to DCA, and we're working with DCA on some of those revisions. So that package should be moving forward very soon. Again, I don't have timelines yet, but they are all in the process. And that is the end of my presentation. Thank you.
Hey, thank you. Hey, did you have a timeline, Lisa, on when the STRIF would start again?
I don't at this point, but I from my understanding is that it could be a pretty quick turnaround, and we will definitely be sending out notifications to everybody on when they need to start collecting again.
Okay. Are you anticipating January 1 or at a quarter or at the July 1?
I would anticipate the second quarter. It may go through, give us the authority during the first quarter, but definitely prior to the second quarter.
Okay.
This is Margaret. Lisa, a couple of questions. The regs for 1346, are you going to be bringing that to the advisory committee before you put it out for public comment?
Margaret, we do try to time it that way. So yes, in the past, that's the way it's been done. And we'll continue with the same process.
So you anticipate that we would get that before the February meeting?
I do not know at this point.
Okay. Obviously, since that went into effect January of 2020, the sooner we can get it, the better. Are you planning to do it as an emergency reg or just as a regular reg?
I believe that's a regular regulation package.
I'm just wondering if you might want to or could be able to do it as an emergency reg so that can be changed ASAP, since it does change, the STRIF application, the STRIF information. Is that something that's possible?
We can look into it.
Yeah, Lisa?
Yeah, go ahead, David.
Hi, this is David Dumble. The change to regulation for 1346 can be done as what's called a Section 100, which is not the full regulatory rigmarole, but is a much more abbreviated process, and we don't anticipate that taking very long.
Okay, good. I had another question. I'm glad to hear that 1344 is on track to get that out by finished by July 21, and that also is something that will be to the committee, you anticipate, before it goes out for public comment?
Margaret, you've got some background noise and it's hard to hear you. Your volume's very low.
Yeah, my phone is interfering. Hold on a second. Let me move it over. Is this any better?
A little bit, sure.
Okay. Yeah. On the 1344, I'm glad to hear that that's on track to be ready by its deadline of July 1st. And again, is that something that you're planning to bring to the committee before it goes out for comment?
All of our regulation packages we plan to bring to the committee.
Great. Okay. And then on the STRIF, I just want to confirm because I wasn't quite sure I understood. You're going to start that at 50 cents sometime either the first or beginning of second quarter of 2021. Is that right?
As soon as we get the approval to do so. It also is a fast track process where we don't have to go through the full regulation package.
I'm sorry, say again, please.
I'm sorry, I think you started talking while I was still talking. The question was when we're going to get that out to you. Is that what the question was?
No, on the, you said you're going to start the STRIF fee at 50 cents. Is that something that has to go by regulation, or you can just go ahead and do that because that's what the amount was before you stopped having to collect it?
So we're hoping that it is we're moving it forward without that. We're moving it forward like the other one that David just spoke about. It's kind of a file and print. So then it won't have to go through the whole regulatory package.
I see.
So
great.
It should be done sooner than a regular package.
Okay. And then the other one comment, given the comments about from Scott about potentially some of these big schools, I think there's some where there's been some back and forth about whether they were or weren't going to lose accreditation and lawsuits and so forth. But given that those are coming down the pike, I'm a little nervous that we really keep a close eye on that, because if some of those close, that could be a large amount of money very fast, and it would be very hard to catch up with a low fee. That's my thought on that. Thank you.
Yeah, absolutely. We monitor it very closely and look at it, and that will give us the being able to turn it on right away will give us the time to really assess and look at the impact of COVID and the Corinthian schools and so forth to get a feel of if we need to turn it up higher or not. We're definitely monitoring them.
Yeah, hi, this is Kevin. I have a question regarding the, I think you said it was called Section 100, the more abbreviated process. That still goes out for public comment, right? Or is that something that, can you, let me rephrase. Can you explain to me how that process works?
Sure. The Section 100 is a regulatory change that does not affect anybody's rights. All we're doing is changing the form that is included in the regulation by reference. And so because of that, it's a much more abbreviated. There's still requirements for notice and so forth, but because nobody's rights are being affected, the rights are being affected by the legislation, not by the regulatory change. And so in that case, everything is abbreviated.
Got it. Thank you.
Hello, this is Joseph. Lisa, I have a question for you that might fall under this agenda item generally, or might need to be moved to future agenda items. In regards to Sunset, can you provide an update on what work products the Bureau has provided to the legislature for that process, if it's simply an update to the materials provided for the planned Sunset review last year, or if it will be an entirely new work product for your report?
Hi, excuse me. This is Doug Smith. Let me interrupt. I think because Sunset's not on the agenda, we can't discuss that item now. It'll have to be put on.
I'll bring that up later for future agenda items. Thank you.
Great. Yep.
Thanks, Doug.
Does anybody else have any questions or comments on 6A through F before we open it up to the floor? All right, great. Moderator, can you open public comment for item 6, please?
All right. This is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A panel for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 6, please click on that icon of a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel. All right, it looks like we do have one individual who has requested public comment. Give me one moment while I pull up my timer. All right, individual identified as Teresa Spiker. Teresa, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Okay, thank you. I just wondered if there was any consideration regarding giving schools the ability to pay the STRF assessment for students, or if we are still going to be required to collect it from the students and pass it on to the Bureau.
I believe that that's in statute, but I'll double check it for you.
Lisa, it would be tough if we had to retroactively go and collect for students that maybe enrolled 6 months ago. So as long as we can make it easy, I think we can still get ahead and get the STRF where it needs to be.
Right. Yeah, you don't have to go retroactive because it's when they make their first payment after enrollment.
Okay,
that it's collected.
And will still be required to collect it from the students. The school cannot pay, right?
At this time, it's still being required to be collected from the students, correct?
Okay, thank you so much.
You're welcome.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Grant Elliott. Grant, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Thank you. Very quick question, and do you have even the roughest timeline on the ESL new regs kicking out of where they are now? Thanks.
David, do you have an idea of a timeline on that? I know it's at its final stages there.
This is for the English as a second language?
Correct.
Yes.
Yeah. Offhand, I do not know. I know it's right at the finish line, but last I heard was OAL had references to the Department of Finance for their sign off, but I have no idea what their time frame is.
And once these two offices sign off, it's a done deal?
Yes. Once we get approval from Office of Administrative Law, the regulation goes into effect. It's printed, is published, and goes into effect at the start of the next quarter.
Oh, thank you so much.
All right, this is the moderator. We'll move on to our next individual who has requested public comment. Individual identified as Myra Pomerantz. Myra, you'll be given 3 minutes to speak and a 30-second warning. I am unmuting your microphone now.
Can you hear me? Okay, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Okay. Is it possible to get a copy of the proposed changes to the application for verification of existing status at this point in time?
And not until it is ready for to be noticed. Once it's ready to be noticed, once it's noticed, you'll be able to review it.
Okay, and will someone notify me that it's ready?
I believe if you're signed up for our mass emails, that you'll be notified that way.
Okay. Okay, very good. Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, this is the moderator, and it looks like that was our last individual who had requested public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, Q&A panel is now closed.
Thank you. That brings us to our next agenda item, number 7, which is discussion of COVID-19 impacts to institutional requirements. And I'll open it to the Bureau to address this one.
Good afternoon, everybody. This is Doug Smith, Bureau Counsel again. Since the COVID-19 pandemic began, the Bureau has been actively monitoring and assessing the impact of the pandemic on the post-secondary education industry and students. The Bureau has frequently communicated with stakeholders and other interested parties to share information and provide support as necessary. The Bureau has provided active support to institutions and other stakeholders during the pandemic, especially as institutions quickly moved to distance learning models. The Bureau has also continued to utilize its social media channels to share information with the public and the stakeholders. The negative effects of the pandemic on the post-secondary education industry will continue to be felt over the coming months. The Bureau will continue to monitor both state and federal actions and will communicate with stakeholders and the public regarding any developments. The Bureau also encourages any institution, student, or member of the public to contact the Bureau with any questions about any of these issues. That's the end of the Bureau statement. The committee wants to discuss it or has any questions.
This is Joseph Holt. I have a comment on this topic, specifically in regards to the content, the mandated or prescribed content for the school performance fact sheet. And some of the metrics therein. For example, on-time graduation rate is something you described broadly, the negative impacts on post-secondary education and student achievement due to the impacts of COVID. That's one obvious area where that will show up for many students who were forced to extend their education beyond the original 29th graduation date because of the COVID crisis. Has the Bureau staff considered, or do they have license, I should say, to add any language to the school performance fact sheet for the impacted time periods that reference the unusual events? Because the definition, of course, I understand, is regulatory and codified, but is there any ability to add language to the school performance fact sheet for context?
Specific questions about what certain schools can or can't do, it's all analyzed on a case-by-case basis by the Bureau. I'm not sure this is the correct forum to go through the actual statutes and regulations to see if there's any discretion or if it's a mandatory requirement that can or cannot be changed. I mean, those all vary depending on the issue and the specific statute and regulations that come up.
This is Lisa Freddie. We have had this question previously, and because it is pretty clear in the regulations that nothing else can be added to the performance fact sheet, that no other language can be added to it, that having an additional document that you want to attach to it or whatever that explains the COVID-19 impacts is acceptable. It's just it can't be actually on the document itself.
Okay, thank you. That was the nature of my question, which of course doesn't vary college to college. The contents of the fact sheet are prescribed. And so that was my question if you had that discussion. Thank you, Lisa.
You're welcome.
Does anyone else on the committee have any questions regarding item 7?
Just on the fact sheet that we were just discussing, I'm assuming that there's added, that would be added at the back of the fact sheet, so the student would see the fact sheet and then have any explanation that would be an attachment at the back. I'm just concerned that if it's the other way around, they may never get to the fact sheet. Has there been any discussion on that or any advice to schools on that?
Margaret, not at this time. We can't set any type of solid requirements or it would be an underground regulation. I mean, it's the law or the regulation basically say that it can't be on the same page. So all we're saying is that it can't be on the same page, but if you want to add an additional page to your documents, then you can. But for us to set up how it has to be done and in what format and in what location would require a regulation change.
Basically what you're saying is the way the statute and regulation read right now, there's nothing to prevent a school from attaching 60 pages to the front of the fact sheet. That's how you read it.
No, I don't think we said that, Margaret. I think we said if that the statute applies to things on the face of a student performance fact sheet, and if somebody added something behind it, that may or may not violate that statute.
I believe they've got to sign that fact sheet or acknowledge they've read the fact sheet.
Right, but we know how, I mean, sign here, sign here, sign here, and I don't think that guarantees they see it. But I'm not quite clear what the difference is between saying it can't be on the fact sheet, but they can attach stuff to the fact sheet, limits it from to being, just one page or being one page behind it or allows.
Do you know how many pages are already in front of that fact sheet? There's more BS in front of this stuff than if we really wanted students to know what they needed to know, we would narrow it down and give them what they need to know. There are so many. It's like buying a car. You read the first page and then you just start initially. We are not helping anybody.
I think we probably all agree in that at some point it would be very good if we had the opportunity to review and put in a bold fashion those disclosures that are most important for students and see if there's some that we don't need at all. But at the moment, I guess the answer is that as long as it's not on the face of the fact sheet, there's really no limitation. So if schools
you make your list of disclosures you don't need anymore. I'm looking forward to seeing those.
As long as you're willing to have the ones we do need in super bold type.
Absolutely. I am so in favor of that stuff, you wouldn't believe it. Well, Everybody is. Everybody is.
Right. That's something that we really maybe should address another time.
Okay.
Thanks, everybody. I think we can open the floor, moderator, to public comment on item 7.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 7, please click on the icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll now pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Great, thank you. I think the next item was just to clarify our future meeting dates. Item 8, Richie, I think you sent out the proposed dates the other day. Do you want to address that now?
Yeah, just if anyone has any conflicts with the dates provided, so everyone has them in front of them or not.
I did not have any conflicts with the dates that you provided. Thank you for getting them out so early. And of course, no one has any idea if any of us will be leaving our houses at any point in the next 12 months, so it was a little easier to schedule than usual. Does anybody else have any, first of all, does everybody know the dates? Because Richie did send them out last week. If not, let us know. And if anyone has any conflicts, please let us know now or ASAP.
Hey, it's Thomas. I don't have any issues with the dates. I mean, it's hard to project out that far in the future, but they look clear for now. Are we assuming, or is it safe to assume the first meeting will likely be online, virtual?
I think that's a safe assumption that our first meeting in 2021 will be through WebEx.
Presumably we can, if we're going to assume February that yes, we will be online, at that point we can have a better sense of whether May is going to be feasible in person or not. All right, well, I'm hearing no objections to our future meeting dates. I'm not sure if we really need to open this up to public comment, but I will. Moderator, can you just open the floor for public comment on the future meeting dates, please?
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I've opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a comment on agenda item 8, please click on that icon with a question mark within a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. I'll pause a moment to allow the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close the Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
All right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
Thanks. I thought we'd have a rousing conversation about meeting dates, but I guess not. So finally, item 9. I know that there was a couple things mentioned during the meeting regarding future agenda items, so I'll open it up to the committee to make any suggestions or requests.
This is Margaret. I would ask that the Bureau staff present to us in a timely fashion what they are considering or recommending for data that can be tracked internally and data that can be tracked on their website that would provide more detail having to do with complaint types, the meaning or the complaints that have been determined to be non-jurisdictional as to what information would be available as to that, the types of fraud, and I'm sorry, my phone stopped working, so I moved and I left my notes. Hold on just a second, if you would, please. Okay. And data also involving complaints that would allow tracking of complaints at a particular school, a particular program, complaints involving particular individuals, and sometimes individuals turn up at other schools 10 years down the road, that kind of thing. And then after the presentation of what the staff has been looking at, a discussion either at that meeting or the following meeting as to any additional comments or suggestions that the committee has. And that I would, when I say timely fashion, I don't know the timing of how this fits in with the IT project, but certainly timely enough so that if the committee did have additional recommendations, they could be considered by the Bureau before finalization of what would go into the IT system.
So, Margaret, I'm not following exactly what you're looking for. I'd hate to go present something that isn't what you're actually looking for. Can you give us some specific bullets on what you would like to see?
Do you need this in the form of a motion, or can it be just in the form of a recommendation, or you're requiring it to be in the form of a motion? Or do you just need more specificity in my comment?
Well, I guess I'm not understanding it. Is you want us to give you a presentation on what we're planning on doing, or do you want to give to us a presentation on what you would like for us to have?
What I would like would be to get from you what you're looking at and what you're considering that you want to have included, so that we, rather than us sort of starting from scratch, I'm assuming that you're already working on some of this, or will be, so there's no need for us to, suggest things that you've already figured out. So I'd like to see what it is that your recommendation, not its, final set in stone, but here's what we're, thinking that we want to have included. And then that we would then have the opportunity to look at that, review it, comment on it, make additional suggestions.
Excuse me, Kate, if I might interrupt. Let me offer something I think might be helpful. If committee members want a future agenda item, it might be helpful for them to state it as, we make a motion to put this item on the agenda for discussion and or action, or just for action, if they specify if it's an item for discussion or action, and or both. That would be helpful for future agenda items.
I'll go ahead and try to state it as a motion. I move that for the first meeting feasible, that we have on the agenda a presentation by the staff, followed by discussion and possible action by the committee as to the additional data to be included in the new IT program that can be tracked either on the website or internally, having to do with complaints, inspections, and compliance.
Doug, was that sufficient for purposes of this item? As presented, obviously, we can vote on it as a motion, but I just want to make sure that Lisa and the Bureau team have a clear understanding of what Margaret is requesting.
Yeah, and I don't know if I can answer if they have a clear understanding or not. I tried to follow it. I think she specified it. I mean, we're really looking for specificity and a specific discussion and or action.
If I can ask that I clarify what the request is it that you want to know what kind of reports that we're going to be having generated from the new system?
Maybe it would help if I give an example. For example, currently it's extremely cumbersome to see what are the complaints under any particular school. It would be good to have that functionality, both that the public could track that and that you can track it internally. It would be good to have functionality so that you could compare or see what complaints related to a particular program at a particular school, or that related to particular individuals who, moved from one school to another and took on positions of in the administration of the school. Those are some examples. As to complaints, it would also be, we've discussed this before, it would be helpful that the categories be broken down so that when it says fraud or other fraud, we would know more specifically what the issue is. If it says non-jurisdictional, it would be helpful to know what jurisdictions the complaints are coming in for that are not the Bureau. In other words, being able to track more specifically as to complaints, and similarly as to inspections, to be able to track that. For example, to be able to look up a school on the website and see all of its past inspection reports.
I'm going to make a suggestion. Based on what Margaret is saying, I mean, just Margaret, what you're requesting seems like it would be outside the scope of what the Bureau would be able to or willing to share with the Bureau committee, just generally, because you're talking about individual complaints against a school where generally, from what I understand, the Bureau cannot share information specific to institutions or specific to students. And so I'm not sure that the level of specificity that you're requesting is even possible, but perhaps what we need to do is have on a future, we could request a future agenda item to discuss what data points will be collected and reported specific to disciplinary actions and complaints so that we as a committee can better understand what the Bureau is as they're building out this IT system, how they're breaking out these different elements so that we have a better understanding of what that looks like. And then at that point, we could probably also discuss what is feasibly shareable versus what isn't. I mean, does that make sense as to what you're looking for, like a better understanding of what the IT system will be tracking?
Kate, this is Lisa. If there's a recommendation, we'll just take it from there. If there's a recommendation from the committee for a future agenda item, we'll take it from there and do our best to accommodate it and answer what we can.
Got it. So, Doug, if we just make a request to have a future agenda item, does it need to be a motion? Or can it just be a request to have it added? Doug is my rules guy.
This is the moderator. Doug, if you are currently speaking, you are muted.
Oh, no, I'm not speaking. Maybe I cut myself off halfway. I don't know. I just did what the rest of you were thinking. I think I said if you can offer suggested future agenda items either way, I think it would be more useful if we can get a committee consensus on what would be useful as future agenda items.
Okay.
But that's just me. You certainly don't have to listen to me.
You're the one who knows the rules. We have to listen to you. Okay, so I'm going to I think, take what Margaret, if I'm off base, please jump in. But if the request is to have the Bureau provide to the committee some additional detail as you're putting together the IT systems as to how you will be tracking complaints and disciplinary actions and what information will be available to the committee. Just, you could, as broadly as that gets, for discussion at a future agenda item. I think that's probably enough to get us started, especially since the IT system is still in development. It's a good time to have a conversation about where the IT system is going to be tracking and how. If that is essentially what we need as a first step, then I would move to have that added as the agenda item, and then we can use that opportunity to discuss and determine what further action needs to happen. Margaret, it looks like you're unmuted, but I don't hear you saying anything. Does that work for you? And Margaret may have lost her audio.
This is the moderator. Margaret, I see that you're connected on your phone. Have you tried unmuting on your phone? All right, it looks like we lost her audio connection. Can we get the audio issue slide up? I believe it's slide 25. She might be reconnecting her audio. All right, it looks like she's connected on her computer now. Margaret, are you able to unmute your microphone?
How is this?
We can hear you now, thanks.
Oh, that's much better. I should have been doing this to begin with. The only thing I was going to say is to amend your motion, Kate, to I think you said as to what can be shared with the committee. I'm looking for two things: what the Bureau is tracking internally, and what the Bureau can share publicly, which would be with the committee. Anything they share with the committee, I guess, would be public. And those two things may be different. So I would just amend to say to the public.
Got it. Okay, so the motion then would be to add an agenda item for discussion about the IT systems tracking of complaints and discipline items, categorizing them, how they'll be broken out, that kind of thing, and then in conjunction with that, what will be publicly available. So that would be the motion. Margaret, do you want to second my motion, and then we can do a vote?
Slight amendment. Before the word discussion, it is for a presentation by the Bureau as to that, and then a discussion as to that.
Okay, amended motion. Would you second that motion?
Second.
Thank you. Committee members, I'll just roll through and you can give a yay or a nay. David?
Yay.
Joseph?
Aye.
Lee?
Aye.
And Thomas?
Aye.
Great.
Kate, if I could, one thing, Lee, that might be helpful for staff would be to consider it in terms of a delta from your current system. We've, for years talked about the limitations of the categories for a student complaint, for example. So just a word of advice in terms of how you would approach the presentation rather than just starting from scratch. And I'm not speaking for Margaret, I'm only just providing some counsel. She might disagree, but looking at how the new system has more granular categorizations that will be useful for your reporting, or ways in which you felt limited in past, that in the future system you will not be limited and you'll have the information you need to be effective.
That sounds fine to me too.
Great. Thanks, everybody. Okay, so Joseph, I think you might have had another agenda item request as well. Did you want to add to that?
Yes, thanks, Kate. I would request that we add to specifically the next agenda, the February meeting, an update from staff regarding the submission to the legislature for the sunset review. I'm particularly interested in because all of that work was done, and then sunset because of COVID was put off to this year, and it will happen in a relatively abbreviated time frame in the first half of this next year. And so I'm curious to what degree that a bureau is updating that report, or if it's an entirely new report that's being made to the legislature.
I would second that motion. I would also like an update on where the sunset review is tracking. So I'll go through. I will give an aye. David.
Aye. Sorry. Aye.
Thank you, David. Joseph.
Aye.
Margaret. Oh, I'm sorry, Lee. You popped up first.
Aye.
Margaret.
Aye.
And Tom.
Aye.
Great. Anybody else have any future agenda item requests?
I have an additional one, and we had talked about this previously, but I want to make sure that it gets put on the agenda. And this also would be for the next meeting or the first meeting where it is feasible, and that is a presentation by the Bureau followed by discussion and or action about the conversion of data to the new system, especially as to complaints, inspections, disciplinary actions, and that kind of thing.
Margaret, are you speaking specifically to that as it relates to the IT system, or just in general?
Yes, specifically the IT system. Sorry, I didn't make that clear. As you recall, we had a discussion about what was going to be converted, how many years back, et cetera. And so I'd want to make sure that we have that discussion, that presentation on our agenda before it gets too far along and set.
Got it. I feel like Sean or someone from the IT team had provided us some information about that, but yeah, that would be useful to understand what the migration looks like. So the motion then, Margaret, is to add an agenda item for the IT update, the next IT update, or as soon as it's available, to include additional information about the migration of the data from the current system to the new system and how the old system records will be maintained, essentially.
It's a little more specific than that. I'd like to have a presentation as to what the Bureau is contemplating with regard to migrating the old data to the new IT system, and then a discussion with possible action by the committee to recommend anything additional or different.
So that is Margaret's motion. Would someone like to second? I'm not getting a second, which leads me to believe that the committee is potentially not interested in this update or including it on the agenda.
Can you rephrase the agenda? I mean the motion again.
Margaret, I'll let you rephrase as it is your motion.
I move that at the next committee meeting or the first committee meeting when it is feasible, the Bureau present its recommendations for the data that should be migrated from the old data systems into the new IT system, and open that for discussion by the committee.
This is Kevin. As a quick question, as an ex officio, I'm not allowed to provide a second to the motion, correct?
I believe that is correct. Unless you're a voting member, I don't think you can second the motion, unless Doug tells me otherwise.
That sounds good to me, Kate.
All right, well, we don't have a second, so I think we're going to have to pass on this one. And does anybody else have any other agenda item suggestions or requests, motions or otherwise? All right. Then with that, moderator, I think we can open up the public comment for this final item.
All right, this is the moderator, and at the direction of the chair, I have opened up the Q&A feature for public comment. Members of the public, if you would like to make a public comment on agenda item 9, please click on that icon with the question mark in a square located at the bottom right-hand corner of your WebEx screen. We're currently sharing instructions on the screen for your reference, and in the Ask field, typically in the lower right-hand corner of your WebEx screen, please type, I would like to make a public comment, and send to all panelists. I'll pause a moment to give the public time to access that Q&A panel and submit their requests. All right, this is the moderator. It looks like at this time there are no requests for public comment. Would you like me to close that Q&A panel?
Yes, please.
Right, the Q&A panel is now closed.
All right, well, I believe that a 9 was our last agenda item, so we can adjourn the meeting. Unless anyone has any objection, I don't think we need to have a motion to adjourn, and unless anyone has a problem with adjourning, speak now or forever hold your peace. All right, then. Before we adjourn for good, Richie, can you just tell us when our next meeting is? I know it's February, but just so everyone has it on their minds before we go.
The next meeting is scheduled for February 17th, 2021.
2021. Can't get here fast enough.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so February 17th, 2021, we'll plan on another WebEx unless some miracle happens between now and then. And I wish you all a very happy holiday season. Stay healthy and well, and thanks to the Bureau for all their hard work putting everything together, and to the committee members for attending. And I think with that, we can adjourn.
Take care.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks a lot.
Everyone.
Have a good one.
Thanks. Happy New Year.
Thanks all.
Good job, Kate.
Thanks.
Thank you.